We are.
got a couple messages that last week it didn't broadcast, but it didn't record, so. And there's a couple of students who are online because they're gonna try and start attending from next week or the week after, so just trying to make sure we can record.
I have the audio for last week, which
Okay.
I should record the audio for this week.
Thank you.
You can send it to me, this one, yes, and I'll send you the other.
I saw the video last week. I actually watched it.
Did you? Oh, okay.
But it's not. Yeah, you need to. Yeah, I somehow found it.
You found it. Okay, so it wasn't labeled or something?
No, it wasn't on the main page.
Okay.
It was hidden in those little layers. Somehow. Weird. Yeah.
Okay.
So last time you were able to follow class?
Yeah.
And also if it
I
was,
watched it. I watched the recorded.
if it was connected straight with the cable instead wireless, the streaming
Oh,
would
I
be much
see.
easier. Because
I
sometimes
don't
the
know where the
signals,
internet really even is.
because sometimes sometimes
the
signals
roof.
goes in and out.
Oh, okay.
And that creates the freezing in
Right,
the Sutra.
right, okay. That's okay. Are we good? Are we on? Okay.
Yes.
We're good?
Good.
Okay. Take 5?
Yes.
Are we broadcasting?
Yes.
All right.
I hope so.
Well, at least we didn't interrupt John's teaching. He's teaching ACI 16 in Saskatoon right now, and they're 2 hours ahead of us, and they were ending at 7:25 our time, so. Okay. Vinaya, that's what we're learning. Vowed morality, and last week we really went over, it's interesting because I think I mentioned it last week too, but usually in ACI there's kind of this pattern, this flow of how all the courses unfold, even though the content differs. And usually class 1 is like a syllabus. It's like a explanation of the, not only the lineage, but the, you know, we get the technical details of the root text and the commentaries and who wrote what, and we kind of get an overview of each of the 9 or 10 classes to follow. Geshe-la didn't do that in this course. He started by asking us why we're here. Like, why are we even in this class? And why do we need to understand ethics, basically? And he summarized it by saying we really, really need to understand the goal. And the goal, as stated for this class, this course, well, you tell me. Okan, do you remember what the goal was for this class? Why you should be in this class?
Nirvana.
You want to reach nirvana. And you can thank Joyce for that.
Thank you. But I'm just saying, I was just paying attention here. I don't think they can really hear you because like it shows the volume meter is just like dinking because I don't think they can really hear you.
Okay, Alvaro's going to come to the rescue.
Look when you eat, look how close we are, and it's like hardly even moving the sound. So I think.
Is it like an odometer, like a?
Yeah, it shows how
meter?
loud it is, and it's like hardly moving when you talk.
Okay,
So
I'll try to speak
Well, the
louder.
volume is so
it's all the way up. and
all the way
everything.
out, video and audio
I
is same.
noticed that about other recordings though when I was
Voice is
producing.
loud.
Her voice is good?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's probably
Yeah,
just
yeah,
orientation.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well, the
move-
mic's facing this way.
How about moving the laptop
Yeah.
closer? We're leaving the camera where it is, but moving the laptop closer so that the microphone's
Yeah.
And
closer.
you could orient it opposite.
Well, actually, the mic is from, I believe, in there.
No, the mic is from the camera.
Oh.
Mic is from the camera.
No, mic is
Oh,
from
from the
laptop.
laptop.
Computer.
Yes.
I think that's
Leave
Sevi,
the
leave the
camera.
camera. I think the camera's okay.
Yeah, then we, after all that, please don't
After
move
all
the
that
camera.
time, don't move
Don't
it.
move the camera.
Okay, bomb
It's
squad
all good,
here.
it's all
Okay,
good.
are you getting bars now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
don't
it's
wanna stay
probably
too close
the
to the computer.
directional.
I don't want to get a computer virus.
Turn the
say
camera.
something.
Turn the lap. Do you want to turn the laptop to me? Like, do you need to look at it?
Sort of.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's good.
No,
Is
it's
it-
better. It's better
Okay.
now. I can see the
The
volume
bars.
thing, and it's
Okay.
better.
All right.
I'm coming ever so
Okay,
soon.
so the goal is nirvana, which means we need to understand the opposite of nirvana, so we know what it is that we're trying to trying to stop, right? Trying to get away from, and that is samsara. So last week we were really defining defining the goal and defining what samsara is. And remember, in both instances, it's not a geographic location per se. It's a state of mind. It's a state of being. And, you know, we defined nirvana, right, Okan? We defined it as a complete cessation of your mental afflictions, of anything that disturbs the peace of your own mind. So, we also define samsara as primarily, well, twofold, right? It was the result of your physical, your body, and the result of your mental state, right? And with the physical, it had to do with the senses, and with the mental state, it was a bit more subtle, but it was really to do with the obstacles that we put in our own way, the way we grasp to things that we think are going to bring us happiness, but aren't the true causes. So it's really interesting. Today's class, we're going to go over the whole Vinaya. Well, actually, we're going to go over the scope of this subject of Vinaya. We're not actually going to go into the details of the subject matter. That's what the next 8 classes are for, okay? But to get a review of the scope of Vinaya, Geshe Michael is referring to mainly tonight the commentary by Chone Lama. Last week we did, at the end of class, briefly go through the root text, the commentaries, the authors, right? And then we mentioned that Lama Quicksilver and Chone Lama were 2 additionally crucial scholars in our lineage. Chone Lama is famous for having written most of the monastic texts of Saramay, which is the monastery that Geshe got his Geshe degree at. So, Chone Lama, actually this is a good name to know. Say Chone, Lama, Drakpa, Shedru. That's his full name, but it's shortened to Chone Lama, which means Chone is the place where he's from. So it's like saying Vancouver Lama, you know, it's, but everyone knows when you say Chone Lama that it refers to Chone Lama Drakpa Shedru. He was from a place in Tibet called Amdo. I think that's eastern Tibet. And he explained the entire Vinaya canon in 150 folios. Apparently 1,600 pages he condensed down to a very concise work. So we're going to use his outline to get a grasp of the scope of what we're going to be unpacking over the next few weeks, okay? Next several weeks. So the first thing that he covers is called a preliminary overview. And how he does this, how he gives us the preliminary overview, is basically by describing the entire life of the historical Buddha, of Shakyamuni Buddha. We know Prince Siddhartha, who became Shakyamuni Buddha, Gautama Buddha, walked on this earth. There's a historical documentation of his birth and death dates, and when he lived in the palace and when he left the palace and all of that. So this is how the preliminary overview goes. It actually follows the historical Buddha's life and follows all of the steps basically that the Buddha took. Now it's interesting because it's not just his life as Shakyamuni Buddha. It's actually the 3 countless eons he took to become Lord Buddha, which they say for all of us it's going to take us 3 countless eons. We just don't know where in that trajectory we happen to be right now. But according to this overview, there is an actual breakdown of all of this. Did you guys do the math to an eon? last course?
The-
Yeah.
That,
Do you remember what the number was?
Wasn't 20?
Well,
was
apparently,
thousands.
one countless eon is 10 to the 16th power
Yes.
times 3 trillion or something like that. Like a lot of zeros is one countless eon. So it's not countless, you can count it, but it's got many, many, many zeros, and there's 3 of them, right, to become enlightened. So, but basically, rather than getting overwhelmed at the immensity, the enormity of all the zeros behind that, it suffice to say that the overview of his trajectory to becoming the Buddha is really about how he walked through the six perfections. The Bodhisattva Bhumis. Have you heard that word before? Bhumi, levels? Bhumi, B-H-U-M-I. Bhumi, Bodhisattva Bhumi are the levels of a Bodhisattva which correspond. There's actually 10 Bodhisattva Bhumis, but the first 6 correspond to having perfected a particular perfection. So you get onto the first Bhumi when you have your direct perception of emptiness. So you're actually not even a first level bodhisattva until that happens. But all of us who have bodhisattva vows, the Tibetans are very, very kind. They call us bodhisattvas right from that moment. And basically how you can think of it is you're a bodhisattva with big fat training wheels. Because that's how you get there. You get there by actually acting as if, right? And yeah, it is how you get there. That's how you start to amass the virtue, right, that's needed to get there. So the preliminary overview talks about how he reached, when and how he reached the first level, and then the second, and so on and so forth. So it's actually quite lovely. And yeah, Choni Lama goes through specific years in which the Buddha did certain things. He goes through something called the 60-year cycle of animals, which corresponds to the 12 stages of the 5 elements. It's just a little Dharma tidbit there for you. I don't think that's a homework question, but it's just an interesting stat. That flows into, in the preliminary overview, the statement that the Lord Buddha made, which we did touch upon last week, which was, if you have the Vinaya scriptures, you have the Buddha in your world. You have the Buddha live in your life, right? So that statement is explained in Choni Lama's preliminary. And then he goes through, this is a homework question actually. He goes through, he goes through the entire scope of the literature. So there's 2 root texts, 4 explanatory sutras. We covered this briefly last time, and you might have to get the specific titles out of the reading, because we didn't go through them necessarily. We went through some of them. He goes through all the relevant sutras, and then he explains the Indian commentaries and the Tibetan. He starts to get into the Tibetan commentaries. He gives an entire overview, basically, of the Vinaya canon, and all of those parts. So why do you think he spent so much time on the life of Shakyamuni Buddha? Like, this is a preliminary overview of the topic of Vinaya, right? And it's really, really interesting to know. We'll touch upon it a little bit later in class too, but at the beginning of his text, at the beginning of any Buddhist text, you will notice that the author always prostrates. They bow down. There's an obeisance at the beginning, and that's usually a clue. Whoever it is that they bow down to usually gives you the theme of what is going to be discussed, because depending on what the topic is, they bow down to a specific teacher or deity, or right? So in this case, they all bow down to Lord Buddha. And Chone Lama explains that that is specifically because of this. Say Lendre. Lendre is the topic of karma and its consequences. Basically, Len, by the way, means karma. Okay? Karma is anything you think, do, or say. Raw karma is basically a movement of the mind. And they say 65 in a finger snap, or 64, 65 in a split second, right? So, we talked last week briefly about how Lord Buddha teaches karma and its consequences, usually by retelling a story of some unfortunate fellow who had to learn a very, very strong lesson by making a mistake and then figuring out the consequences of it. And then at the end you find out it's him in a previous life, right? Like this is the Jataka tales that we were talking about last time, and that's most of the beginning part of it. But karma and its consequences, what does that have to do with living a good life, right? Well, it has everything to do with living a good life, because basically, if you can figure out what it is that causes your world, what it is that causes the things that well, causes everything, but probably initially we'll want to start out with what causes us the things that make us unhappy, because that's kind of an obvious one, right? Like nobody wants to be unhappy. So if you can figure that out, and then also figure out what it is that makes you happy, like what are the real causes, right? Because we're so mistaken by what we think the causes are. We think that the thing that came immediately before is what caused whatever it is that we think because someone said something to us we're upset or we're elated or whatever that reaction is, and we have to really look deeper. So this actually takes us, the whole idea of Lendre takes us to having to understand the 3 levels of reality, because karma and its consequences is actually the 3rd level. The first level, say Nungyur. Nungyur means the level of reality that you can directly perceive, the obvious reality. Now, this is interesting. Obvious reality is not the same for everybody, right? Like if you have full use of your eyesight and you can see color, and you were standing next to a person who was colorblind, you would not be seeing the same. Like this would not look the same to you and to the colorblind person, right? But you would both see something. So whatever it is that you're seeing would be your obvious reality. Okay, that's the Nungyur. And then say Kokyur. Kokyur is hidden. And the Kokyur is where you actually need logic to figure it out. You need some sort of commentary or instruction, and you also need to use your own logic. And they say a good example is emptiness. We can understand the concept of emptiness through anecdotal instruction, through our own sort of intellectual struggling with the pen. And, like with that sort of intellectual analysis, we can verify the existence of emptiness. And I shouldn't say the existence of, because it makes it sound like it's a thing, but the fact that emptiness functions for us, even though it's an absence of something. It's so hard to describe emptiness, but we all understand, having done as much ACI as most of you have, right? So emptiness actually is in the second level of reality. Say Shinto Kokir. Shinto Kokir is deeply, deeply hidden. This is the level of karma. Karma and its consequences is even more hidden than understanding emptiness. Okay? They say that to truly, truly, truly know exactly what causes, what exact cause is the cause of an exact result, requires omniscience. It requires being an enlightened being. Only an enlightened being can truly know exactly what those 65, 64 movements of the mind, when and where and what exactly they're going to bring you. Specifically, like we know the generalities, but the specific workings is Shinto Kokir. So we have to rely on the wisdom of enlightened beings to understand, because left to our own defenses, we wouldn't actually figure it out. Not really. Because we think the thing that came immediately before is the thing that causes the result, right? And sometimes it's similar, sometimes it's close, but it's not. See, a cause isn't a cause unless it works every single time, 100% without fail, right? So this is why we go back to why we study the Buddha's life and why we rely on him, or even all enlightened beings, because he wasn't the first Buddha that walked the planet, right? To truly, truly understand what the causes are for the consequences that we are experiencing. Because if you can figure that out, you can unpack your life and you can go back and see what brought you what you're experiencing, what it is that you can really work to replant so that you can perpetuate it, or what you need to switch up to have a different result in the future. Geshe-la talks about in the audio that I think it's around this point, he talks about how when he was a young monk, there was a Tibetan astrologer who would come by every once in a while, and the baby monks would all like save their rupees to, because this was in India at the time, right? And they would like book a session with the astrologer to find out what their future was going to hold for them. And they had a very beautiful teacher who said to them, "Don't waste your rupees. You want to know why you're the way you are or what you're going to be in the future? Just understand Lendri. Just study what you're studying, and you will know." He says, just look at your life right now, and you can figure out exactly who you were before and what you did to get here and where you're going to go if you keep doing what you're doing now. You don't need to spend your rupees to have somebody tell you some lies that you think you want to hear. So, not to say that there aren't authentic, people who are sensitive to the topic and can give you some sound advice. But this was the story that Geshe-la tells that you can hear in the audio. And it's true. It's really, really true, because if you can know the real causes of things, right, you can actually control your future. You absolutely can. The reason, though, it's Shinto Kokir is deeply, deeply hidden. So where we get discouraged as mere mortals is the gap, the time gap between the cause and the result. There's no, even the Lord Buddha can't tell you, well, they can actually tell you if they specifically, but they don't tell you because it's too much actually for our own minds to really grasp. But because the time gap is not something that we can know in advance, we either get impatient, or we get discouraged, or we doubt whether this cause really is going to result in what we want, But that's also why it's really good to keep your book, Because if you keep your book for any period of time and you track this stuff, you prove to yourself that certain causes result in certain causes lead to certain results. So it's good to do those little clinical trials, because then you can have a lot more. Not only is it an experiential knowledge because you've done the scientific test, but then you can have faith because of your logic that you could apply it to larger issues, right? To larger experiments in your life. So, but these 3 levels are really interesting to understand and to remember. And to be perfectly honest, I never remember the Tibetan for the first 2, but Shinto Kokir for some reason sticks because it's really the one that we have the most challenge with. But you know, we're not going to describe the different correlations in this course. There are correlations given in ACI 14. In the Wheel of Knives Sutra is specifically a good one. Also in Geshe Michael's Diamond Cutter book, the business book, on basically applying these principles. He does go through some basic ones. We've talked about it, those of you who have taken ACI 5 in the Karma class, right? Mm-hmm. But it's interesting to understand why it would be in the realm of an enlightened being to really, really understand that. They say that, you know, even this floor, right? Like, it's got all these different patterns, and whether you find it pleasant or unpleasant or neutral that's a karma ripening. But they say an enlightened being can tell you specifically why that particular mark right there is there right now for you. Specifically. I can't tell you that right now, but an enlightened being could. And so too with everything else in your world, right? So, this is where it gets really, it's not abstract. This is the level of information that if we can get good at this, we can change our reality, okay? This is not magic. This is actual practice, right? So this is the whole reason why in the preliminaries the authors all bow down to Lord Buddha, and that whole first section is about his life, okay? So that's the very, very first part. And then, is that back door open?
Yes.
Okay. No, I'm thinking maybe we should turn that fan on because it's really warm, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It might be a little noisy, but let's turn it on. Let's turn.
So the door closed?
No, keep it open. I just think we need to get more air moving in here, and maybe we'll turn that other fan on too.
Is it too loud?
No, it's not loud, but maybe like focus it there. Yeah, focus it there and.
Good?
Got the camera. Perfect.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still the same.
Oh, that's
Not really. You're about the same
That's okay.
tone. But I think they
That's
can
better,
hear it.
hey?
I think they hear you.
Do you guys want maybe the phone?
Better?
It's fine, this will-
Well,
I could also plug it in there.
no, it's noisy to go over top of
Yeah.
lectures.
That's
Wait,
what I'm
everyone-
concerned about.
Be
even
quiet for a
now.
second.
Are we okay? Can you hear me?
Wait.
It's like-
It's like a little bit in the
Okay.
background.
That's okay. I think that's better. I was just seeing some droopy eyelids, so. Okay, good. Let me just make sure I didn't forget anything in that first part. Yeah. You see, this is really useful, right? If we can figure out what it is that brings us one thing, then we could figure out what brings us everything. And, you know, really, really put it to use, right? But it's Shinto Kokir, so don't get discouraged if you put things into motion and the results don't happen right away. Or the results are mixed. or, you know, like we have to remember our laws of karma, and we have to remember the, because it's interesting. I think Lama Marut has taught this really, really beautifully many, many times, but he mentions it in Spiritual Renegade. This is a worldview, right? To believe in karma and its consequences, to believe in emptiness is a worldview. This is the worldview that if you're studying ACI, you're saying you believe in. If you've taken your Bodhisattva vows, you say you believe in this worldview. It's not the view of things are random. It's not the view of things are all under the power of one deity. It's the fact that everything is in the nexus of cause and effect. But any of those worldviews, and I just rattled off three big ones, it's really, really hard, including this one that we say we all believe in, to do it 100%. Most of us believe in it when it's convenient, when it seems to function for us, right? But this is the practice. The practice is to remind ourselves, and that's what that Bodhisattva vow is, like to never lose the wish, right? To never lose this belief that karma and its consequences work, that emptiness works.
Can you give an example of how it's convenient that you use? Yeah.
If things are good, oh yeah, I planted the causes for this. Someone's yelling at me? No, it couldn't possibly be because I actually irritated somebody else. It's because that person is up. Right? Even if in our, right?
Yeah,
or it's because
thinking.
that person had something bad for breakfast or whatever, right? And even if we catch ourselves, we've had that thought. Anytime we get even remotely irritated or upset, we have actually not believed in karma and its consequences. We haven't. Because if we truly did 100%, 24/7, we actually couldn't get upset when anything irritating happened. Even if we still got irritated, we'd be like, oh, there it is. There's that one going. It's ripening. Bye-bye, you know? But we don't do that, right?
Could have said that today.
Yeah. But again, don't beat yourself up. If you get those moments of, okay, I know I'm supposed to have done something, but it's really hard to figure this one out. Like, it's okay to know that there are these ripenings that are going. It's practice, right? That's why they call it a practice. If it was easy, we'd all be enlightened already.
I had this idea because when you go to some stores and they ask you for charity and they put this big star in your name that you donated $2 or something, and I was thinking one day, if I had lots of stickers and every time I got so angry and irritated and I just shut up and took it, and I go to myself, oh, I just burned a bad karma and put a lotus in my bowl. Just write a date.
Well, you could.
You know?
But you
Just
know,
think.
do you remember the story of how the early Tibetans used to carry around black and white stones?
Yeah.
And if they had a bad thought, in went the black stone, and
Yeah.
if they have a good thought or deed, right? And then at the end of the day, they look at the stones and how many they collected, right? So it's like
just
that,
like-
yeah.
Something to like, into becomes of your life. It seems like there needs to be something to constantly remind you and motivate you because it's so easy.
It's so
to
easy,
forget.
and this is where.
And then suddenly you go, oh my gosh, here
Yeah.
you go again.
Well, this is why it's useful if you have a contemplative practice. If you have, I mean, the very fact that you're in this class and thinking about these things and reviewing them and, struggling with them, keeping your book, it's just all of it helps with that awareness thing. Because even in deep retreat, I just finished a 5-week retreat. The beautiful thing about retreat is time slows down enough that you can actually see your mind with these thoughts that come up as they come up. And you can catch them but it takes that level of withdrawal from everything that distracts us. My teachers are in deep retreat, the great retreat, the 3-year retreat, and they say that they understand finally the level of awareness that it requires. this is almost 3 years, right? Like, so, you know, so on one hand, it gives us a little, you know, be kind on yourself when days like that happen, but on the other hand, it's not an excuse to not work at it, right? It's harder in the distracting world, but if you can hold your awareness even for a second in all of this, the virtue is huge. It's really, really huge, and it will actually snowball into being better at it more and more frequently, okay? Okay, so that was the preliminary. And then from there, so that was the first part, right? That Chone Lama went the preliminary. Then he goes on to an actual, he calls it an actual explanation of the root text. And so most of the overview has to do with Buddha, the trajectory of the many lives, right, of the time frame. And now Chone Lama is going to explain the text. And the first thing he does to explain the text is to explain the title. And basically, we touched on this last week too. Why is Vinaya called Vinaya, right? It's like Vinaya, remember the Tibetan was Dulwa? Dulwa means to tame, to discipline, like to rein in a horse. And so there was the statement that Vinaya is Vinaya because, right? And it's because it disciplines, it reins in our body and our minds. It reins in our senses, our attraction, our ignorant attraction to the things that appeal to our sense organs, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, what we touch. And he does this by telling us what it is that the title means. So it is that, you know, the Vinaya means to control. And you're controlling those two things. And this is actually where the prostration comes in. So remember I said that who they bow down to indicates the subject matter. So for example, if you read a lot of Jitsikapa, he often bows down to Manjushri, who is the Buddha of wisdom. And you know that text is going to be about emptiness. Wisdom and emptiness are kind of synonyms. It's going to be about that whole topic, right, or that whole concept. When you bow down to Lord Buddha, you are bowing down to all of this. You're bowing down to. See, if you truly, truly, truly understand karma and its consequences, you couldn't help but lead an ethical life. You couldn't help but be kind, right? So this is why we're bowing down. It's by bowing down to the Buddha, it's like making a declaration that you will reach nirvana, that you will be able to stop the kleshas, which is Sanskrit for mental affliction. By the way, the Tibetan for klesha is myomon, and you will do that by understanding the subtle workings of karma, the subtle connections. This actually leads us to another really interesting topic about studying any spiritual study. And it's that the books, the authoritative sources, especially, and we're in the context of Buddhism, so the Buddhist books, the Vinaya books, for example, it's really, really important to understand that it's not like reading something off of the top 10 list. It's not something that you just pick up for information or entertainment. The relationship that we have with our scriptures, it's a relationship. They become companions for life, basically. They become your refuge. They become your protection for your mind and your heart. And it's a whole different experience that you start to have. And you also start to understand the preciousness. In fact, it is a bodhisattva vow, right? That any scrap of any word is dharma, right? Like any word can be. It doesn't have to be in a, ye olde Tibetan text necessarily. Like you can hear dharma in music. I hear dharma in music lyrics a lot, And so it's interesting to understand that and to know that these books they're living things, really, in that respect. I may be jumping ahead, but in this class, it goes on to say that you should also clearly, to be a book that is worthy of being your companion, of being the focus of your attention, because we have this precious time, right? Shouldn't be wasting it. That's not to say you can't read a New York bestseller ever again. I'm not saying that. Like, it's definitely good to, books, movies, music, when you need a break, when you need a rest, it's okay. But as long as it's not distracting you and that it becomes your whole focus. Because that can become your whole focus. Geshe in this audio talks about people he knows who spend the entire weekend reading the New York newspaper, the weekend paper, which is about this thick, but that's where their mind is being consumed, basically. So they go on to the 4 qualities that a book should have. And this is really interesting because if they don't have these 4 qualities, then it's not going to help save you. It's not going to give you the proper association so that you can reach nirvana and Buddhahood. Okay? So let me give you the 4 qualities. Jumping ahead.
Subject is meaningful.
Whether it's meaningful is kind of relevant to the person, right? Yeah, but subjective. But yes, absolutely. It's interesting. It says.
We're talking specifically about spiritual books.
Yes. What makes it how it qualifies to be that for you, and it's easier to look at
Is it the same as the 4 qualities of a Buddhist book?
Or Dharma book, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Yeah, it might be. Do you remember what they were?
Subject is meaningful, it has a goal, it has a purpose, and the relationship between all 3.
Yeah, that's one way to slice and dice it, and it is really. Let's just see if they give us a different one. That is correct, but let's see what he says here. Oh, this is interesting. Okay. I think you are right. They don't actually give the 4 here, but they say that they bow down to the they say that they say this book contains the 4 qualities as validation that it is an authoritative scriptural source, and you're right. I'm pretty sure because that did come up in a different ACI, because they don't actually list them specifically.
And meaningful is usually defined as enlightenment.
Yeah. Yeah. In Tibetan, say gusok, chu, shi. Shi is the same also in Chinese and in Japanese. It means four. So gusok, chu, shi means those are the four qualities that a spiritual book should have. And actually, yeah, okay, Geshe says it right here. He's not getting into the four tonight, but Farah, I think you're absolutely correct in that. And he says, because he's not talking about the subject, he's talking about the scope. But in the obeisance, in the prostration at the beginning, they state, Gusok Chushi, that this text has that, so that's, it's almost like the fine print, right? Like the say, give the validation, or the, what is it when you say something good about somebody else? Acknowledgement. When you give, LinkedIn does it all the time. I give a recommendation, or a, what's another word for it?
Approval?
Referral?
Approval.
Yeah, all of that. What is that when you give somebody in business
Reference?
it's gonna come to me. Anyways, I'm off topic. But yeah, it's that
Promoted?
testimonial. It's a testimonial is what it is of the fact that this is an authentic book, right? Okay. Because they do become your lifetime companions, and it really is about what it is you're going to expose your precious mental real estate to, right? Okay. So then we get into, so this was in the, remember all of this was in the first part, which was the preliminary overview, and then we were just talking about the explanation of the actual root text, and it starts off with this bowing down to the Buddha, right? And giving this testimonial. So then we get into the actual subject matter, which has 3 parts, and say Dompa, Malopa, Tokje. So Dompa means vows, and this is a very similar word to Dulwa. Do you guys remember what Dulwa meant? Taming. Taming. It's the study. It's what we do when we study Vinaya morality. But yeah, Dulwa is the restraining, the disciplining, the reining in. And Dompa is a similar word. It's it means to tie up, restrain. So it actually is the word for vows, and the vows are meant to keep you out of trouble. But it's interesting, you know, in English when we hear vow, it sounds restrictive somehow, sometimes, right? It sounds like I'm gonna have to give up stuff. It's like it doesn't necessarily have a very positive connotation, necessarily. I mean, you know, but in the case of Buddhist vows, as I understand it, and because I've taken vows also, I gotta tell you, it's not restrictive at all. I find that vows actually give you a lot of freedom, because they take the guesswork out of stuff. You know, should I do this or should I do that, right? And it's a really beautiful way to free up your mind to focus on what's important, to get stuff done that you need to get done if you're going to get out of samsara and get to nirvana. So the first thing is to understand that this word, interestingly enough, technically, literally means restrain, tie down. But what it actually does is it gives you power. It gives you a lot of freedom that you didn't know And it's interesting, right? Pratimoksha vows translates as individual freedom vows, right? Because if you follow them, it takes you, the individual, to freedom. And remember in class 1 we talked about another word for nirvana was peace, right? Shiva. So, yeah.
Maybe tie downs your mental afflictions.
Exactly. Well, no, but that's exactly it. We tie down our senses that are unduly, ignorantly distracting us, and we tie down our mental afflictions so that our mind is free to focus on virtue and to work for us, not against us, right? Yeah. So this leads us into the whole topic of vows. And again, we're not going to go through the actual vows tonight. There will be courses coming up where we explain the 200 and something monks' vows, and there's even more nuns' vows than monks' vows, and we'll go through the laundry list. Although, again, I think I explained last time too that we'll be given the overview and the scope, but I'm not a monastic, and even if I were, I would not be able to tell anyone else who wasn't specific monastic vows. So we'll get the the basic flavor, but there's a lot of vows that aren't monastic, and many of you who have taken bodhisattva vows know that. There's the refuge vows, there's the lifetime layperson's vows, there's the bodhisattva vows, like there's more, there's celibacy vows, there's one-day vows, and there's like all sorts of things that can be useful to anyone. So the actual description of the vows also goes into an actual description of who the vow preceptor. Basically, it's like the 10 qualities of the Lama and the 10 qualities of the student, right? Without going specifically into that, it does explain who is qualified to give vows, like what, who is qualified to take vows, and all of that would be in this section also. How is it that a vow forms in a person? That's also described. So again, we're not going through how that works today. This is the overview, right? But that's in the second part. Chane Lama gets into, in this section, the measurement of time. Because now this specifically has to do with monastic vows, but actually there is a bodhisattva vow. Is it a bodhisattva vow or a tantric vow? I think it's a bodhisattva vow where you have to respect your bodhisattva elders, right? Yes. Yeah, okay. Well, that has to do with time. It doesn't mean that because someone is chronologically older than you, I mean, it's nice in our culture to respect your elders, right? But specifically it means if someone took their bodhisattva vows before you, you have to respect them as if they were your elder, regardless of whether they're 20 years younger than you or not, right? So with monastic vows, they get very specific. And when they grant the vow, they actually also then announce, according to the lunar calendar and all of that, the exact time and date and space, because in the monastery, this becomes very, very crucial. And it has to do with protocol and hierarchy and all of that. So that's why they get into a description of the measurement of time. Then they go into the 5 classes of vows, and the degree of severity of the vows. Geshe says they range from extremely serious to very serious to medium serious, and there's 112 lighter ones. Anyways, we're not going to go into the specifics today, but he'll unpack that for us in future classes. Inside all of this, he explains how you can lose your vows, and how and of course that's going to lead us into another subject of how to restore them, right? In a future class, we're going to get into Jatson Kappa's commentary about all of that, how you can lose your vows, and ethical conundrums. They get into a lot of ethical conundrums. What do you do when you have two vows that have conflicting demands on you?
How's that possible?
When you have different layers of vows, it actually does happen. For example, a monk is not allowed to possess money. Actually, they're not allowed to to carry money. They're actually not allowed to own cloth. This is actually in the scripture. They're not allowed to own cloth for more than, I don't know, 2 days or something like that, and not more than enough to make like one robe or something like that. I don't remember the specific quantities, but it's like that. However, if you are a bodhisattva monk, and there's plenty of them, if it would help sentient beings, and sentient beings in your world are all the people in your life, basically. If it would help them, you must have a whole warehouse full of fabric, and you must use it for the highest good, and you must hire people, all of this stuff, right? So, but those two vows are in direct, if you took them literally, are in direct conflict with each other. So the rule of thumb generally is that the higher vow trumps the lower vow, but again, that has to be really, really, it's a razor's edge, because when you get into the tantric vows, into the higher vows, if you took that at face value, it could be seen as you don't need the lower vows. And Jade Tsongkhapa talked about this. Was it in last class that we talked about this? That even in his day, we did, because it was about ethics leading to concentration, which led to meditation, right? And how if you had higher vows, just go straight to meditation was what they were believing they could do. But Jason Kappa says you couldn't do that if you had, if you weren't able to focus your mind, and you wouldn't be able to focus your mind if you had a guilty conscience, or if you had, right, we were talking about the water reflecting the moon, and that if it was rippling or if it was muddy, like it wouldn't reflect the moon, right? So, like that. And the vows are in, there's lower vows, there's higher vows, there's different levels of practice for whatever your capacity is at any given moment. And when I say lesser and higher, it's not about better or worse, it's about where our minds are at any given point. A really good overview of that is The Source of All My Good, Jade Tsongkhapa's Lam Rim in 14 stanzas, because when you read through it, you'll see at the basic level, we just want to end suffering for ourselves. And then you move up to, you also want to look after everyone else in your world. And then you move up to, well, I want to get enlightened in this life, because that's the only way that I can really look after everybody else in my world. And with all of those layers comes different levels of commitments and vows. And there's a famous sage in our lineage named Lord Atisha, and he's famous for having traveled around with a stupa, which is, we have an example, that little silver thing is an example of a stupa, or you see buildings in Tibet and India, structures that look like a little, almost like a, I don't know what you would call it, a little sort of form that looks like this, and it's often, some of them are massive buildings that you can walk through, but they're considered holy places, and they have relics and things inside and scriptures, and it's supposed to be auspicious to circumambulate them, and they have prayer flags and stuff. Anyways, Lord Atisha used to travel with one, a travel stupa, and anytime he had a klesha, he would get off of his horse or camel or yak or whatever it was that he traveled on, circumambulate that, and basically confess. So it took him and his entourage a long time to travel, because he would be jumping off of his horse like at every thought. He is famous for saying, I never break my monk's vows, ever. My bodhisattva vows, on occasion. My tantric vows, I break them like a rain from heaven. Like, it's just because they're almost impossible to keep to the letter of the literalness, right? So anyways, so that's why they do talk about when you have ethical conundrums, what do you do, right? Okay. And then I'm Geshe-la took a break here, but I'm going to do this next session because I know, Leonardo, you have to go at 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last section, which you can catch on the audio, is this. Actually, let's just say it. Gokhan,
Gokhan,
Do, Korwe,
Korwe,
Korlo,
Korlo,
O, Changapar, Chow.
Chow.
This has to do with the wheel of life, which is that image right there. So after the break and the last part of the class is a whole description on the wheel of life, okay? But before that, so we were talking about the vows, right? And so the whole section on the vows talks about who can give vows, the timing of it, the 5 different classes of vows, the ethical conundrums, all of that. The last part is understanding the monastic precepts, and with this, or the monastic practices, and with this come 3 specific topics. By the way, your notes are exquisite on all of this. It's, if any of what I'm saying sounds a little confusing, read the notes to this class, and John Stillwell, who took these notes back in the 90s, was phenomenal in just really laying it out in a very Jigsaw Copper way, you know, like clearly with lists, and yeah, it's gorgeous. So this monastic practices is basically 3 things. One, some of you have asked me about this. One is sojong, and it's the monks or nuns confession, okay? The second one, so say sojong. Sojong happens twice a month according to the lunar calendar. We've been talking about actually starting a sojong session here. Lama Chuki down at Diamond Mountain has done this, or is encouraging lay people to do this, and it's basically a confessional practice, and she's actually given me the template and the formula to do it. It's beautiful. It's kind of like the 4 forces, for those of you who know what that is, but it has both the confession part, which the 4 forces does, but it has an equivalent rejoicing part. So it's like doing the black and white stones, almost. It's quite lovely. And this is where, if you are a monastic, you are required by your vows to do this twice a month, and they get together. So it's a group of like-minded practitioners, right, who get together and confess the big things that they need to confess, and then rejoice about the big things that, because actually Geshe-la says, you know, the one thing we don't do enough is we don't rejoice enough. It's really, we're really good at beating ourselves up over stuff, but really what we need to do is rejoicing more in ourselves and in others. And it's a beautiful practice to get into. The second one, say Yarne.
Yarne.
Is, this is an interesting practice, Yarne. It's a retreat. It was specifically a 3-month summer retreat where the monks would all together go on. So but for those of you who were on the Shamatha retreat, it would be like that, except in the summer, and it would be for 3 months, okay? Yeah. So it would be a time of dedicated practice and study, and you know, really focusing on understanding stuff like that, or emptiness. And it was a very strict thing. And then the third, say Gaye. Gaye always happened after Yarne. So after the 3-month, there was Gaye was a huge celebration where they would sing and dance and play, and you know, just really basically party as far as monks could party. But you know, they would, it's interesting because Geshe-la talks about Gaye and how it would have this real festive flavor to it. And this one particular Tibetan game would come out, and he didn't even know the monks had these, and it would like come out at this one time, and everybody would partake of it, and it sounded really lovely. But it's interesting to know the structure, right? Because it is important to celebrate. it's important to confess and to rejoice and to retreat and to celebrate. So this is like the structure that is given in the overview of the section of the vows. Okay? So that's the basic structure of the Vinaya. And then there's a part that isn't considered a separate structure, but it's called the ancillary, is that how you say it? Ancillary. It's like auxiliary. It's like the additional points, the extra things, right? And in that, it talks about ancillary, it talks about things like how to properly build a temple, how to consecrate the land, how to, so it gives details like that, and in that it says that every temple should, at the foyer, have a wheel of life. And that's why we get into, after the break, we'll get into what the specific instructions are for how to have a proper wheel of life. But that's where it comes in. It comes in that ancillary section where it gives you these different guidelines on where, when, and what a place of, like a temple or a monastery or a school should be, how it should be built. Okay? Okay, we're going to take a break. So we'll, I'll put on some music. Please help yourself. There's some bubbly drinks back there and cookies. Not champagne, but there are bubbly drinks back there.
Far like spread of bubbly drinks. It was her enthusiastic.
Yay. And there's cookies, right? Okay.
Cookies!
There's still cookies. Okay, so we'll take a five-minute break and then we'll finish up. There's only the wheel of life.
I figured out how to use this. You just go.
Excellent.
How did that go? How did that go? Okay.
You have to make that sound too.
I have a microphone, a USB microphone, that I'd be happy to donate if it will work with this, because then you can have it closer and your audio.
Okay. Should we try it next time and see if it'll work?
Yeah, if it works.
Awesome.
Like, is it one of those like silver mics?
It is a snowball. It's called snowball.
Is it like for like
Called
radio
snowball.
recording kind of thing? Oh, cool.
I have mine here.
It's really cool because I want to try and start up a YouTube channel.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to gather the stuff slowly. So it's gonna work eventually.
Oh, you're welcome. Let me just plug this in. Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, there's content. Well,
There we go.
let me take a look. I like your shirt.
Thanks for coming.
Yes.
Good to see you.
Yes, it's good to see you.
Bubbly water. It is. It's the bubble. It's happy water.
For the next two classes.
Okay,
Just
so
to let
let's
you know,
sure.
It's only because I was in my last class this time he was here, and I'm not going to be in the next two classes because I'll be with him.
Nice.
So that's the only reason I would miss this class that I'm not taking that.
So this is Doug Pearson. Do you guys know Darren? DJ Freak Nasty? Anyways, he's a student. This is, yeah. He's a student of Love of the Roots. And this is a group of, you know stuff. This is a kirtan group that he's put together with Dustin and 10 other musicians. Here's a
going to try and start a YouTube channel.
How many games were submitted?
Like, I know
One has like 688,000 subscribers, and he started like a year ago.
Wow.
And then like one he has 8 million, so 700.
That's a lot.
And they get paid for every subscriber, every like, every view.
Really?
If they make a deal with YouTube, you know how the ad shows in front of the videos? That means they made a deal with YouTube, and they get money for like everything.
Wow. So that's good advertising.
I know. My guys, like he started off like 7 subscribers, and now he has like 250, and it's like viewers.
Wow. But I think we'll do that. I like it.
Some people take years.
Yeah.
Some people don't finish it at all, so good for you, they're focused for it. Albert, how you doing, sweetie? Glad to have you back. How's your house yet? Yeah. Oh, good. When are you receive?
Mike?
Yeah, well, this is as far as my 3 months. The one I was for the work was similar. But I'm
So it's
wondering.
like a snowball.
Snowball.
Is that the name of the company? Or is it just like same?
Snowball is a model.
Because I've seen so many different ones. Like I've seen the ones where you put down, and you know, like the iPod app, like recording, like sort of those.
Voice memo?
Yeah. And it's like those type of mics sometimes I see.
You're still recording, eh?
Yeah, I'm recording. I stopped broadcasting. Because if I stop recording, I'll have to save it and I'll have to do part 2.
Oh, okay. So then will it so it'll be live as a.
Yeah, if I broadcast it, it'll
Hold
be
on,
live.
I have a question. So what'll be available to be viewed after?
Yeah, after.
Oh, hold
yeah.
on, I'm not finished speaking. Let me finish my question. After, will it be edited out, this stuff?
No.
Okay.
That looks like a microphone.
Yeah,
It
well,
is a microphone.
this as far as, yeah, I think this will serve. I think we'll just leave it for now. I was gonna, but it's a PC, so it can't start a crash and plug it into it.
Okay.
So, I'll fulfill it for next time. Yeah, well, it'll just be better to have it in the
What is it?
microphone.
Wow.
Yeah, this is far. I had one similar, and it just gets better for the do it.
We leave the door open since Joyce's iPad. It's locked actually, yeah. The door is locked.
Yeah.
And I will plan to I haven't read Oh, you're doing it now? So you started with the nice rest of the
It's usually done.
I went to one of the golden deer. Or the story.
I don't know.
I'm wondering about how
I don't know what's I think we'll probably we'll have satsang. We'll have lots of, we'll probably get invited to some feasts. I don't know. You know what, sometimes, you know, I don't know. I did not, he asked me.
Yeah.
I couldn't say no. I think there's many it's still there.
I can find most of
I would work for the next couple of months to my butt off. I mean, certain that's called faith. Trust. I've never in my life had lack of food or shelter in my life. Ever. So and they're basically saying they have to leave yeah, yes, that. Or you find some vodka. Ooh,
Yeah, because there's an apple per day, and I do. See, there's apple per day, and every time there's an apple per day, it depends
well, that's one thing I remember is that people talking about being violent by Western eyes, right? They see but I think they're all pretty serious.
They are that way. Yeah, very well.
And I'm wondering I don't know, I'm going to go for it. I might prioritize a little bit. I might modify it. I don't want to, but I might put it in.
Okay, you don't say.
I think we can.
This is my appetite.
So that's what I think about, they actually encourage more faith. Like, don't water down the lesson.
Yeah.
And don't change the intent.
Yeah.
But deliver it in a way that will encourage.
Thank you.
Wow, it's already 9:10.
Yep.
Ah, the fishes.
We're almost done.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know. Oh yeah, that has this fish tank screensaver on there.
Mm-hmm.
Is this perfect?
Press screensaver.
Yeah. Okay, so the last bit, which we already talked about, I'll just shut this off, is this line here is what it means in Tibetan is the opening instructions for the Wheel of Life, and it says, let me just find it. Yeah, basically this means, like, so the Gokanju means at the foyer, at the entrance. Korwe is the circle of suffering life, which is samsara. Korlo'o means the wheel. And this last part, cha, means part. Apar means 5. And cha means make it, give it 5 parts. So basically it says put this wheel of the circle of suffering life at the entrance in the foyer and give it 5 parts. And then it specifically tells you what the 5 parts are that we're going to get into. Okay?
So what is it again, please?
This is the actual Tibetan
Mm-hmm.
in transliteration, and it basically means that place this drawing or image. Basically, it means place the wheel of life at the entrance and give it 5 parts. That's a rough translation.
So we're talking about Wheel 5 being put on the monastery?
Actually, at the entrance. So this should actually be by the front door.
Uh-huh.
Now, I did notice in the kitchen. I meant to ask. I'm going to bring it. It's not called the Wheel of Life, but I'm pretty sure.
We have mantra.
Have you guys seen this? I keep meaning to ask who brought this in.
We brought it in.
You brought it in?
Yeah, Christine brought it in.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Wow.
It's
Can you
still-
get those?
Still, there is something missing.
There's something a
that
little different,
the,
yeah.
The Buddha is inside the wheel.
Well, I don't know if he is, because isn't that the Buddha right there?
There is something.
Okay.
I know that, Christine.
Well, I also know that it's not called, this is called the Wheel of Becoming. This is the Bhava Chakra. So I don't think it's the wheel, I don't think it's the Sipe Korlo.
Shadi. I know where I seen it. Shadi
Yeah.
had it. And she was
Okay.
explaining it.
That it's close, but it's not quite?
To me, that it's
Okay.
not quite. Yeah.
It's very, very similar. I'll tell you the parts that are similar, but that's probably why it hasn't been put up. But we are looking for a Wheel of Life. Like, that's the back of the book, which is why the book is kept up here. And because we don't actually have the tanka, but let's put that there. Okay, so basically we're given a prescription, okay? And oh, by the way, there's 2 stories on where the original image of the Wheel of Life came from. I think I've told one of these stories in a previous class, but one of them was between King Udayana and another king in ancient India, and gifting each other. It was right, and there was this custom where you had to return a better gift, and so these 2 kings, these 2 royals, were trying to outgift each other, and King Udayana was a student of Lord Buddha's at the time. And he goes to Lord Buddha to say, okay, the other king has just sent me the most ginormous jewel in the planet. I can't outdo him. What do I do? And Lord Buddha basically says, send him a picture of me. And this is how it should be drawn. And it becomes the Wheel of Life. That's the one story. Well, the other story is the one that's told in this class. And it's about a monk, about one of the Buddha's disciples, who became a monk but was still attached to his former life, and he was married in that life, and his former pleasures, and he was not very dedicated to being a monk, so the Buddha takes him to hell and shows him hell, basically. And the experience, the sheer experience of his trip through the hells gives him renunciation. And he comes back motivated, and Lord Buddha says, okay, draw what you saw. And that becomes the Wheel of Life also. So, yeah, Buddha says, now I want you to draw what you saw and put it at the door of every temple. So here's the 7 parts, okay? So the first part, we must have won. Canucks were playing tonight.
Was there a we in them? I don't think there's a. I don't find myself as a part of that we.
I know, it's so funny though, because it's. But you know what's so funny?
It's we versus us versus them. That's the difference.
Do you guys know Venerable Jigme? She's come here and taught. She sent me an email just before class saying that she had been asked by one of the deep retreatants what the hockey scores were. I have a feeling I know which deep retreatant it is.
There's only one Canadian, right?
No, there was more than one, but there's one who we know who is very much a hockey fan. And she said, Sherri, I have no idea where to even look. Can you give it to me? And I'm like, I don't know either, but I know my father was watching the Stanley Cup. Yes. So I Googled Stanley Cup 2013 and up
Is this
came,
for the Stanley Cup?
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
San
playoffs.
Jose versus Vancouver Canucks.
I don't even know who was playing, but up came a bunch of links, and one of them went to a schedule that gave
NHL
the scores so far and the upcoming dates. So I sent that to her, and I said, if you print this out, I think it's all he needs to know. So, but yeah, that must have been it.
So it wasn't me hearing that.
No,
They were cheering for us.
Us, we.
Us.
It's the royal we.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing we need is the main wheel, which in Tibetan is cha nga. And cha nga. It's and they have this ng. It's like the nga, the nasal. And so see, there's this wheel, right? And in that one, there's the wheel. And
How many wheels are?
there's just the one, but it's broken down into 12 parts.
Oh, okay.
And actually 12 parts and 5 rounds, which is why this one's pretty close, you know. That's 6. But anyways, well, there are 6 rounds. You can, if you break the Deva realm into demigods and full gods, then you get 6. So yeah, it just depends on how you slice and dice it. But those are the within that wheel, Sevi, you've got the 12 links of dependent origination and the 5 realms. Okay. So the second part, oh, this is interesting. The second part refers to beings who are born miraculously. And this is interesting because when you are born in hell, you're not born a hell baby from hell parents. You just appear fully formed, and that would be a miraculous birth. a bardo being. We talked about in Death in the Realms of Existence, we talked about the in-between state. This is where bardo beings would fit into the samsaric wheel also, okay? And then in the middle, and this one does have it too, and the Wheel of Life painting there's 3 animals depicted. And it's usually a pig, a snake, and a rooster, or in the early drawings it was a pigeon instead of a rooster. And the pig is gross ignorance. The snake is ignorant disliking, and the rooster or pigeon is ignorant liking, desire. And in modern painting, sometimes you see the 3 of them kind of chasing each other's tail, but in the original one, out of the mouth of the pig came the snake and the pigeon, because they say out of gross ignorance comes our ignorant attractions and our ignorant aversions. And those are usually right in the middle, because that is the root cause of all of our kleshas, of all of our suffering, of all of our misperceptions of ourselves and our world. Okay? Let me make a correction. So in the first one, it said that you have to have the main wheel with 5 parts depicting the 5 realms. Second is the bardo beings, the miraculous beings. The third part is the center part, the pig, the snake, and the turkey. No turkey. The rooster or the pigeon. And fourth is the 12 links of dependent origination, which are the 12 facets to the wheel, okay? And then the 5th component is that the whole thing is in the clutches of impermanence. And they draw it, this one too, they draw it as this creepy monster. See, the creepy monster holding the wheel?
Yes.
That's the whole wheel is in the clutches of impermanence, is what that means.
Don't you need that one?
What's that?
That says whole thing impermanence in the clutches?
It's in the clutches of impermanence.
Represents?
So it doesn't mean that the universe is in the clutches of this creepy monster with fangs. That's not what it means. It means that your whole existence is exactly. And because of that we suffer. Because of our attachments to the realms, to the links. That is in impermanence. That goes back to that class where we can't count on owning our shirt tomorrow. You know, like we can't know for sure that this body isn't going to fail us in the next day or week or year, or you know, or that our relationship is going to be the same, or our job is going to be the same, or our health, or the people we love. Like it all changes, right? And that causes us suffering. The 6th one is it says that the Buddha should be pointing to a celestial body, and usually it's depicted as a moon. He's pointing, it's kind of hard to see what he's pointing at, but in the properly painted ones, the Buddha is outside of the clutches, outside of the wheel, and he's pointing towards the moon, which represents nirvana. Yeah. So the Buddha is pointing the way to nirvana in this wheel. And then 7, the last instruction says that at the bottom of all of this you should inscribe 2 verses. And the whoa, it's really long in Tibetan. I'm going to totally brutalize this. Let me see if okay, let's try it all together. Repeat after me. Tsanpar, Cha, Shing, Nirwa Cha, Sangye, Tenla, Jumpar Cha, Dambu King, La, Lang Chen Shin, Chidar, Demi, Shambar Cha, Karshir, Rabdu, Paryu, Te, Chundu, Dula, Chugirpa, Kewe, Korwa, Rapangne, Dunyal, Tranmar, Chepargyur. Very good. You guys sounded awesome. Basically what it says is know what things you should do and learn the things you shouldn't do. Basically it says take up the things you should do and give up the things that you shouldn't. Enter the teachings of the Buddha. And smash the Lord of Death. So that means that if you study this painting and you understand it, you will be able to smash death itself. Kind of a cool thing when you think about it.
So that's the wheel of samsara?
The wheel of life is what it's called, yeah. Yeah. So basically what this means, and the reason it's given in the Vinaya teachings, is that if you practice the Dharma, if you Dulwa, if you Vinaya, if you discipline your mind and your senses, if you do this, you will be able to leave behind the wheel of rebirth, the wheel of suffering, and put an end to all of your suffering. That's the promise that's in the wheel of life. And that's the promise that's in the Vinaya. And that's class. Kind of cool, eh? Yeah, it's getting juicy. Okay, thanks for hanging in there, you guys. Let's dedicate. So, I don't know how many of you know Dee Dee, but she had hip surgery today. And, actually no, yesterday. And I heard from her daughter Emily today that it went really well. And Dee Dee was a little nauseous, because I think the anesthetic kind of makes you nauseous. But other than that, doing well. Yes. So, I think she'll be in the hospital for a couple of days and then she'll be at home recovering. So let's gather up all of the virtue of this class and send a lot of it to her to heal really sweetly.
Sange Shindu Mikte Uwargi Droga Nanja Shima Shok Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami Kewadi Kewoku Sunam Yashe Tatakshi Sunam Yashe Lejen Dampa Kun